especially concerning forest conservation. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, while shared, the responsibility for climate adaptation and mitigation is not and should not be evenly distributed. Expecting countries like Sierra Leone to bear the brunt of a crisis that scarcely contributed to without robust support from the primary emitters, the industrial giants, is fundamentally unjust. Our stance is unequivocal. We are here to collaborate, not to capitulate. We seek cooperation, not charity. The actions of significant polluters must pivot from mere declarations and vague commitments to actionable, technology-driven reparations. It is a demand grounded in the technical feasibility of climate justice, not just its moral imperative. A unified front against the existential crisis is not just desired, it is imperative. As I close, I implore all of us present, the hourglass of action is dwindling, and the sands of time wait for none. Let's come together, not just in spirit, but in action, but in actionable solidarity. For in unity we find just strength, but not just strength, but salvation. Thank you.
Another round of applause for President Bayo. Thank you very much. Now let me take this opportunity to request my sister again, Her Excellency Saleh Work Zewde, the President of Ethiopia. Madam President, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very important summit. Congratulations to the African Union for organizing it, and for Kenya for being our gracious host, as it is in the tradition of this country. Africa has tried its best to make its voice heard. This is not the first time that we meet to do so. In fact, to speak with one voice and to alert partners of the disastrous consequences. Ethiopia has been on the forefront of this fight. A lot has been done to coordinate our efforts in order to have a strong common position. Common position is indeed always needed in our African Union Forum. Today it's about climate, but the continent's major issues such as peace, stability, progress requires indeed our common position. It has been increasingly difficult to explain to our people, and particularly to our youth, this contradiction. Resource-rich continent and yet poor people. To explain the injustice that has been mentioned many times here today. That is why our summit cannot and should never be a talk show, but a place where concrete actions and actionable actions are being taken. Let me also say that without sufficient research publications, it would be difficult for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change to get accurate representation of Africa's special needs and circumstances that would build evidence-based for advancing the key ask of the continent. So it is imperative that as Africa, we prioritize investments in our research capacity to develop scientific publications to inform and guide global efforts to combat climate change. We must emphasize on investing in African research institutions to produce regionally relevant science that can inform the different working groups under the IPCC. This endeavor requires a strong commitment from both African scientists and the international community, accompanied by the financial capacity necessary to deliver this research. Ethiopia has witnessed in the past decades, including the last consecutive years, persistent drought, flooding, locust invasion, where millions were severely affected. We've been carrying out different practical policy and action interventions as a step to contribute to emission removal and building adaptation capacity. Besides, we've also put in place national adaptation plan to build and boost resilience and adaptation capacity. Building climate resilient green economy is one of the pillars of our 10-year national development plan. As part of our strategic consideration, we have launched the long-term low-emission and climate-resilient development strategy that has been submitted to the UNFCCC with the aspiration to achieve net zero emission and building climate-resilient development by 2050. The Ethiopian Green Legacy Initiative that has been mentioned again today, that was launched in 2019, has succeeded in planting 25 billion seedlings on the degraded landscapes by mobilizing volunteers throughout the nation. The initiative helped for the development of more than 120 nurseries and created more than 180,000 jobs throughout the country. More importantly, the initiative is intended to inculcate the green behavior in each of our citizens. The greening initiative has been scaled up into fruit-bearing perennial trees, thereby directly linking the initiative with our food system transformation strategy. In the agriculture sector, Ethiopia has achieved notable progress in enhancing its wheat production, effectively transforming a deficit of 15 million metric tons in 2019-2020 into a surplus of 65 million quintals in 2022-23. I think this achievement has enabled Ethiopia to meet not only its domestic need, and in fact commence with exports. This gives me a good opportunity to thank the African Development Bank, and most particularly its president, my young brother, for the support that was given to us. The plan is to cultivate 2 million hectares during the dry season alone in 2023. The success of wheat production is critical for the country's efforts to enhance food security and achieve food sovereignty. In terms of renewable energy production, Ethiopia is also investing on green energy projects such as hydroelectric, wind, solar, and geothermal energy sectors, as well as promoting modern rural cooking technologies. We have successfully run the hydro energy producing projects, including the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, with domestic resources which will significantly make difference in the country's status in terms of social, environmental, and economic needs. Ethiopia is striving to finance climate actions proactively and persistently as means systematically addressing the economic challenges of the country. Accordingly, the government has invested over $82 million from 2011 to 2019, mobilized from domestic, bilateral, multilateral sources, as well as from international climate finance institutions on climate change mitigation and adaptation projects and programs in agriculture, energy, transport, industry, forest, urban development, and health sectors. Despite this investment, Ethiopia still needs to attract and mobilize a significant finance to support its climate-compatible development agenda. We still count on our partners to fulfill their commitments to developing countries and committing themselves for the new challenge of setting new quantified finance goals in the coming years. We also strongly urge multilateral financial institutions to undergo a serious reform that fits for purpose for the needs and circumstances of developing countries, rather than fueling the historical debt accumulated on the shoulders of developing countries and mainly Africa. Our future depends on our decision now. Urgent action is needed in limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius to avoid worst impact. 8 years after its signature, ensuring the implementation of Paris Agreement is not an option again. As I conclude, I would like to assure you Ethiopia's unwavering commitment to work with our fellow Africans and other global partners to achieve our priorities and the long-term objective of making the planet comfortable for present and future generations. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my dear sister. Another round of applause for President Zewde. Let me now take this opportunity to request Brahim Ghali, the President of Sahrawi Arab Republic. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto, and also head of the Committee of Heads of States on Climate Change, and also head of the AU, and also Mr. Musa Fiki, head of the AC, Your Excellencies, heads of states, heads of governments, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure at the outset to extend my wholehearted thanks to the Republic of Kenya, the government of Kenya, and the people of Kenya, and President William Ruto for this gracious invitation to attend this meeting. Would like to thank you for the excellent hospitality, and would like to thank you for all sorts of efforts and generosity for the sake of the success of this great event, which is the Climate Summit in Africa. And our Saharan Republic also is facing the climate change like so many other countries in the world. We're facing all these challenges related to climate change. Meanwhile, We have another struggle to put an end to occupation in my countries due to the occupation because of the conflict with Morocco. And those challenges are intertwined. This situation led to the displacement of more than 200,000 of our citizens to some territories that are suffering from climate problems, and temperature in the refugees camps are immeasurable. In our occupied territories, the different practices of occupation, which is outside the control of the international law, without any kind of control, it leads to the aggravation against climate change, like, for instance, the problems with fishery, and this depletes our water and agricultural resources for the sake of exports. And this kind of military occupation is sort of a wall and divides our country into two parts. And this deprives the occupied territories from water. And this is a very dangerous environmental deterioration, and this increases drought in our region. It also led to so many deeply rooted changes in the surface of the land, which became more exposed to wind erosion and also water stagnation. There are also mined areas along this wall became inhabitable, and also it has a very limited economic production. Those challenges, huge challenges, required practical measures on our side to deal with the situation. And in this context, we developed our NDC, and we identified through it the urgent measures for adaptation with climate change and mitigation of its limits. And we did that through strengthening development, which is based on renewables instead of fossil energy. And we supported NDC by having an NAP or NAP through the common ministerial initiatives that included several ministries. In the Sahrawi refugees camps, we developed agricultural systems to reduce the use of water. We also developed modern means with lower costs for housing. And the purpose of that is to face the increasing risks of floods, in addition to the spread out of using solar energy in small units. We also have experienced some electricity projects using solar energy, wind energy, and we're using it also in medical facilities in remote and isolated areas. There we use solar energy. Mr. President, although we have a desert nature, but we do have so many resources to provide to the blue economy in Africa. We have long coasts, and it's very good for fisheries. And our coast, which goes as far as 1,110 kilometers, the land there is known for its resources, and of course it's adopted by Ramsar Convention. Those areas are Wadi Saqiya, Bujdur, Dakhla Bay, and Sabkha Imlili. And although all those resources are exposed to climate change, because of the excessive depletion of those resources under occupation, but our country emphasizes that it's committed to execute and implement cautious plans in this area, and this is in harmony with the African initiatives and its goals to protect the African coasts in Africa. In addition to our work or setting out administrative plans for the important environmental areas, and according to the climate change requirements, we're going to work with other countries and have partnerships and with those countries and African organizations to build our national capacities and to exchange experience in relation to the blue economy. The delay of the termination of the occupation by the United Nations, which is the last in Africa, that doesn't mean that we are fully participation in the international global efforts to face climate change and its detrimental impacts. It is illogical that we're deprived of getting the required and allocated financing to face climate change, and we're also deprived of the technical assistance through the climate change mechanism under the United Nations and other organizations. We cannot be deprived from our rights and duty to take part with Africa and the world in this kind of efforts against climate change. And also, we have been coexisting for years and years with those dire and difficult climate circumstances like other countries. We should be represented in the new FCCC and also in the COP. And also we should sign also the Paris agreement and take part in the negotiations, and to also adopt our NDC regularly to the UNFCCC. Our voice is and will be an African voice, and it's going to support the African voice and stance. Sustainable development and the management of blue economy in Africa is strongly related to the way we use to respond to climate change. And we are ready to contribute with our brothers and sisters in Africa and the whole world to achieve the best results and outcomes. I wish you all the best in this summit, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Gali, for that statement. Now it's my humble duty to request His Excellency Evariste Ndayishimiye, President of Burundi, to make his statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mheshimiwa Ruto, na hongera sana kwa maandalizi mazuri ya mkutano huyu. D'abord, rendre grâce à Dieu le Tout-Puissant qui nous a donné ce beau continent.
Thank God for having given us this very beautiful continent and many opportunities for development.
Votre Excellence, Monsieur
Excellency William Samuel Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, our host,
Mesdames, Messieurs,
Excellencies, heads of state and government present, representatives of international and regional organizations, all protocols observed. At the outset, may I thank President Samuel Ruto, the government and people of Kenya for the warm welcome accorded to us. I also congratulate the government of Kenya and the African Union on the excellent organization of this summit, which is being held at the appropriate time. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, climate change is one of the greatest collective threats to mankind. In Burundi, the impact of climate change, mainly through drought and torrential rains, violent winds, floods, and landslides are the major factors of displacement of people. To this we have to add the rising of the Lake Tanganyika and the growing land degradation, which push families to fight about the remaining fertile land. According to the findings, the annual loss in Burundi is estimated at $100 million. In these losses, 72% because of flood, 5% because of torrential rain, and 40% of violent winds. Thus, these weather vagaries, in fact, lead to $70 million of loss, and it impacts on the well-being of the peoples, their livelihoods, provoke the destruction of human habitat as well as infrastructures, the proliferation of and the spread of diseases and loss in human life. Over the past 20 years, the 1001 hills of Burundi are exposed to the impact of climate change. Burundi was used to having rainfall of 9 months, but today drought has even grown beyond 4 months, with an unusual season and rhythm of seasons that affect agricultural productivity as well as animal husbandry. Burundi has increased the number of initiatives in order to face this phenomenon. Burundi is in line with all the conventions that relate to climate change. In this regard, Burundi has adopted an environment code in 2021, and one of the policies for environmental orientations taking into account climate change. This program is accompanied by the mobilization of farmers and by putting, that is, the planting of trees in fertile arable lands in order to retain the rain water. Burundi prepared in 2021 its nationally determined contribution operational plans for adaptation. Plans also adopted, and according to Article 9 of Article 4, Paragraph 9 of Article 4 of the Paris Declaration. At the practical level, Burundi is mobilizing regularly youth on vacation in preparing the nurseries for agroforestry and forestry seedlings, and to plant them during the period of reforestation, and also to have a program that is Burundi since 2018 wants to rehabilitate the degraded forest lands. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Burundi has the ambition by 2040 wants to develop its objectives of development and the protection of environment and the enhancement of resilience to climate change. According to these perspectives, there are many projects that are envisaged in order to consider a climate resilient program. The establishment of agropoles, hydroelectric centers, using photovoltaic cells, and the removal and the processing of waste, and through technological innovation that are adapted to the agricultural and situations where you will have fuel, wood and other natural gas and biogas which were going to be used. As you know, Africa is bearing the burden of the impact of climate change, although it contributes less than 4% of global warming and emissions. Therefore, there is an urgent appeal to the developed countries to honor their commitments in Paris, made in Paris, and to work in favor of the developing countries in order to mitigate the climate change and also ensure the transition towards a green climate. To conclude, we reiterate our commitment to the Paris Declaration and also the plan of action of 2022 to 2032 of Africa as regards climate change and also resilient development. And I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your comments. Another round of applause for President Evariste Ndayishimiye. Let me now take this opportunity to request the Vice President of Angola, my dear sister, to come and make her statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excelência William Samoei Ruto,
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. William Samoei Ruto, Your Excellency, Mr. Azali Assoumani, Chair of the African Union, Your Excellency, Mr. Moussa Faki, the Chair of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, First Ladies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Allow me, Your Excellencies, to present to you, first of all, the regard of His Excellency, Mr. João Lourenço, the President of the Republic of Angola, whom I have the honor of representing in this August summit, attended by member states with the aim of contributing to finding durable solutions to address global challenges related to the climate change on our continent. We would like to take advantage of this opportunity to applaud the government of Kenya for the warm welcome I received as well as the warm welcome to the Angolan delegation. We would like to applaud the African Union for this important initiative. We would also like to applaud His Excellency William Ruto, the President of Kenya, who is a coordinator of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government for Climate Change, for incentivizing member states to contribute for the process of green transformation of the continent and for the development of the continent's human and natural resources. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, about half a century ago, the environment came to the center of the development, of human development. Just like other regions, Africa has been affected by the global shocks, including the global financial crisis, the increasingly growing impact of climate change, and of extreme weather events such as floods and droughts, which amount to a threat to the African economies, which has had a negative impact on the implementation of the different national programs, and which has been preventing us from achieving our sustainable development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, the President of the Republic of Angola, João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, continues to prioritize issues related to climate change through the National Programme for Sustainable Development 2022 to 2027, which has defined as a priority food security, family agriculture, local development and adaptation to climate change, the education, health, for greater development of human capital, the creation of inclusive employment, as well as modernization and expansion of national infrastructures, both port and road infrastructures, the development of industrial centers to support the diversification of our economy and sustainable growth. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is a continent rich in opportunities where women and youth are some of the greatest producers of food supplies. Therefore, we must fund initiatives and projects that involve women and youth. We need to finance green employment for the youth in order to increase and strengthen the adaptation and resilience of our communities and promote sustainable development. Angola is fully committed with the implementation of the UN framework for climate change. For that reason, we have been implementing policies and action plans, such as the National Strategy for Climate Change 2022-2035. This strategy aims to address the challenges launched by the Paris Agreement and to assure the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as establish the vision of the African policy for the Angolan policy for 2035. Out of its own initiative, the Republic of Angola is developing a diversified energy program, and today it incentivizes energy transition for clean and renewable energies through the implementation of two projects, which is the project of the photovoltaic panel, which will be producing 235 megawatts, which will help reduce the impact of the greenhouse gas emission to the tune of 935,000 tons a year. We are also building 5 photovoltaic parks in 5 provinces in Angola. When it comes to adaptation to climate change, we have been implementing mitigation activities to help mitigate the impact of the drought in Angola. The country has invested more than $130 million for the construction of the Kafu Channel, an infrastructure that will bring water to the communities affected by the drought, as well as to support agricultural activities, in this way building the resilience of our rural communities. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we acknowledge that the road is long. With regards to technological solutions and innovative solutions for climate challenges, the responsible, sustainable production and consumption. On that end, we are working with the African Group, implementing initiatives that will allow us to honor international commitments, especially when it comes to increasing and ensuring that at least 70% of our energy comes from renewable sources by 2035. Ladies and gentlemen, the damage and the losses Africa is suffering as a result of climate change are high. They have been contributing for social instability. They have been contributing to mass displacement and have been contributing to the existence of conflicts. Angola, therefore, calls for a fairer and more equitable global partnership. Angola believes that the investment in climate projects in Africa will not only benefit African nations, but will contribute for global climate stability. We must act fast. And to conclude, I would like to thank everyone who helped organize the summit, and I would like to reiterate the commitment of Angola towards equality, resilience, and towards everything related to the progress of our beloved Africa. I would like to reiterate our trust in the African Union and in the international community, so that together we can face challenges associated with climate change. Together we can overcome the obstacles and build a better future for communities, for Africa, and for the world. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Another round of applause for Angola. Thank you very much. Let me now take this opportunity, with all humility, to ask President Ismail Omar Guelleh, the President of Djibouti, to make his statement. Your Excellency.
Monsieur le Président,
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, President Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, may I thank the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, and the brotherly people of Kenya for the warm welcome accorded to us since our arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. It is a real pleasure for me to take the floor at this forum which is in line with our strategic thought and dialogue and exchange of views for the sustainable development of our continent through the potential which blue economy affords us. The Republic of Djibouti subscribes to the Moroni Declaration and the strategy of coordination for a mechanism of the coastal countries which alone encompass 13,000 kilometers. Our country is partly desert country and affected by climate change, and this has been imposed also on us. That is why the tertiary economy occupies 87%, while 3% only is for other components. In fact, we have a very important part played in our economy by the port and the sea. In fact, seawater has enabled us to resolve the problem of access. Its first regime of desalination, that is to say that the development of economy, blue economy, is an imperative need for Djibouti, and it is in this spirit that we have worked out a national strategy for blue economy in 2023, and the national vision is the guiding principle for the action of the government. Its partners and the civil society in working in the maritime economy. In fact, we have worked out a 5-year strategy as well as a plan for implementation of a blue economy, and both are aligned to the strategy and the plan for blue economy and the strategy of IGAD for blue economy and inclusive sustainable economy that can contribute significantly to the transformation of the Horn of Africa. The other sectors identified, that in addition to the port and maritime activities, are fishery and aquaculture, and also the maritime security and safety. We have renewable energy and telecommunications through the submarine undersea cables. Mr. President, the oceans transcend the states and they connect all of them, and we should harness this potential in order to create wealth. This is the essential of what it means to develop a blue economy, that is to establish partnerships that will enable us to make use and exploit our oceans, and also a paradigm for action leading to sustainable development. That is why the strategy of blue economy should depend on 3 principles: enhancement of economic activities and the maritime activities, the safeguard of natural resources and ecosystem services, and the establishment and the creation of sustainable jobs and growth. We have to ensure that oceans create opportunities for our peoples. More than 80% of the people of Djibouti live on the coast. That is why we think that inclusiveness, ownership, and the empowerment of the coastal people and communities are essential for the implementation of blue economy before we can think of other world supply chains. We need to guarantee the local capacity, legitimize, regulate, and establish opportunities. Mr. President, the awareness of the possibilities of the oceans by our societies and also is associated to sensitization about the threats and also the threat to maritime and climate change, because this can unleash a dynamic for a better system of protection and sustainable use of marine resources. The preservation and protection of our oceans will guarantee the sustainability of our planet. And this preservation should be accompanied by action. That is, to fight against inequalities and the harmful practices that impede and affect the governance of oceans. Illegal fishing, unlimited commercial and industrial fishing, the dumping in the toxic waste in our oceans are major risks to our planet. This conference should, in fact, be the point of departure for the trajectory of development of our oceans and seas. We are aware of the African potential as regards blue economy, but also our vulnerability. That is, to unleash the potential of blue economy will regenerate in Africa and beyond, and will demand the mobilization of adequate financial resources, because the capacities of our states to take advantage of blue economy remains inadequate. In spite of many commitments made by the international community as regards adaptation to climate change and increase and enhance resilience, our achievements in fact remain below what is expected and what is demanded. That is why Africa continues to urge our partners to develop and honor their commitments, because the development of blue economy is in line with the spirit of sustainability and resilience that is recommended by Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, and is a breath of oxygen for our countries and for our deserts. I thank you.
Another round of applause for President Ismail Omar of Djibouti. Let me now take this opportunity to invite the Vice President of Namibia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellencies, Head of State and Government, Ministers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to extend warm greetings from the Republic of Namibia, specifically from Dr. Hage Gottfried Geingob, President of the Republic of Namibia, to you, President William Ruto, for your excellent leadership in the fight against climate change and for hosting this very important and timely summit on climate change. I further extend my gratitude to you and to the people of Kenya for the excellent way this summit has been organized and the warm hospitality extended to my delegation since our arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. As Your Excellency have said, I'm finally happy to have returned home to East Africa. Today, I wish to shed light on the effect and impact of climate change on Namibia and her people. Namibia's geographical location in southwest corner of Africa, with its vast desert landscape and arid climate, make it particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Rising temperatures, erratic rainfall patterns, and prolonged droughts are becoming more frequent and tense, wreaking havoc on the country's economy, on our environments, and of course, affecting our people. Agriculture, a cornerstone of Namibia's economy, is significantly affected. Prolonged droughts and unpredictable rain patterns lead to the reduced crop yields, livestock losses, and increased vulnerability to food insecurity. As a result, farmers struggle to provide for their families and to contribute to the nation's food production. The impact on rural communities is thus severe, exacerbating poverty and inequality. Moreover, climate change exacerbates the water scarcity challenges facing our country. With limited freshwater resources and a growing population, the demand for water is increasingly high. However, as temperature rises and rainfall becomes erratic, rivers and water bodies dry up and groundwater reserves deplete. This scarcity not only affects drinking water availability, but also impact on agriculture, industrial activities, and hydropower generation. The water crisis strains communities, hinders economic development, and threatens social and communal stabilities. Your Excellencies, these challenges are not unique only to Namibia, as the whole continent experienced similar, if not worse, consequences of climate change. We need to be clear in our message to the international community as it relates to what some refer to as climate injustices or climate justice. The global response to the effect of climate change in Africa should be characterized by agency, collaboration, and support. Africa, as a continent, is particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change, despite contributing minimally to global greenhouse gas emissions. Developed nations must fulfill their commitment to provide financial and technical assistance to African countries. Adequate funding is crucial to support adaptation and mitigation efforts, improving structural resilience, and promote sustainable development. Technology transfer and capacity building initiatives can empower African nations to implement climate-friendly solutions and maximize their potential for clean energy generation and sustainable agriculture. As Africans, we need a stronger voice, unity, and wield more international influence to bring around the necessary change on the continent for the betterment of our people if we want to realize, and I quote, the Africa we want, in line with Agenda 2063. By working together, we can build a more resilient Africa, mitigate the impact of climate change, and ensure a sustainable future for the continent and all its people. I'm therefore positive that through the Nairobi Declaration, we send a clear message to the international community, and especially to our partners present here at this conference, that the time to act is now. Merci beaucoup. Obligation. Obrigado. Thank you all. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Now it's my opportunity to request the Vice President of Colombia, my sister, to come and make her remarks. Your Excellency, Madam Vice President. She is the first woman of color to be Vice President of Colombia. Welcome.
Buenas tardes. Saludo al presidente.
I greet the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto. I greet the excellent President of Comoros, Azali Assoumani, His Excellency Moussa Faki, the President of the African Union Commission, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, all the presidents and leaders, ministers, the media, and all those present here. In first place, I wish to thank the President Ruto for having invited Colombia to participate in this great summit on climate here in this African continent. I come sent by the President Gustavo Petro, who was invited personally by the President of Kenya, and I'd like to thank him for blessing the central discussion that we have today, as that is a call to all of humanity to care for the great challenges, especially this planetary challenge that is putting into risk the life in the planet. As an African descendant woman, I'm very proud to be here in the mother continent. From here, my ancestors came. They were slaves when they left, but today I return as a free woman vice president. And that means that we have chosen freedom, justice, and dignity as people. It's an honor for me to be here to form part of this very important discussion, and it is the challenge that we have to, and which our nations face with the climate change. As you have said, Africa is the voice of the planet, but it's also the place where humanity came from. And today, knowing that Africa is giving directions on how to save the big house, the planet. However, it is necessary for this voice to be heard, to be extended to the global south. Today here, Latin America is present, the Caribbeans are present, because we are suffering the same challenges as you are. My country this year, as a government, we have had to face a crisis, a very strong crisis on account of the effects of climate change, floods, which have put in danger the lives of the most vulnerable. But now we have a drought which is starting and which is going to put into danger human life and the life of the fragile ecosystems which form part of this great lung of the world, which is the Amazon and the Pacific region. As we know here, there is another part of this lung of the world, which is the Congo Basin, the region of the Congo, a very strategic region for guaranteeing equilibrium. In this sense, President Gustavo Petro has made several proposals to the world in the United Nations, and today these propositions are placed before you. Whatever has been said today here about how to assume the polycrisis, the different crises that we're experiencing. The crisis of hunger, the crisis of migration, crisis of health, and the pandemic. All this is a sign of this planetary crisis, and of the many crises that derive from the impact on the planet of the climate change. And in this sense, therefore, the countries of middle income or the vulnerable countries are the ones that suffer the greatest consequences, as has been said here several times by the speakers. We are not the people responsible for the emissions, but we suffer the greatest consequences of them. And here the problem is a problem of finances. How do we finance the actions that we are carrying out in our countries and in our regions? The real problem is a financial problem. It's not a lack of political will to do something. The real problem is that we don't have the resources, sufficient resources, to look after, to challenge these planetary challenges, to face them. And therefore, we support the proposal of the President of a new reform of the structure of the financial system. We cannot attend this crisis with the same rules and norms of the international financial system, which certainly has a colonial view, or colonialist view, where the rich people sustain themselves in the economy by exploiting the poorer ones. And this colonialist vision will not allow us to challenge the situation that we are experiencing. Therefore, we propose the exchange of debt for climate action. This exchange of debt obviously cannot be in the traditional way as has been done before, because there would not be any just situation. We would not have the sufficient conditions to do properly these exchanges. These exchanges obviously imply special conditions, and one of these proposals is that we should reach agreements, multilateral agreements, to work on this transformation and on the financial system. And in addition, we should together build within this agreement, this multilateral agreement, a plan, an urgent action plan. The planet doesn't have much time. We do not have much time to continue speaking. We have to go into action. And this happens because of political will. The political will of the countries of the North, the G20, who continue emitting gases, but it is not sufficient for us to act in the South if the global North does not take up the challenge of limiting its emission of the gases, as we were saying, as the General Secretary of the United Nations said a few minutes ago. In this sense, therefore, we propose that we should do the same, that what was done in the case of the pandemic. The International Monetary Fund should issue special bonds so that these can contribute to create a global fund to allow the middle-income and vulnerable countries to have the economic conditions to be able to face these challenges. Without this, it would not be possible to advance. Without this commitment to reform the financial system, our countries will continue being drowned in debt, and worse, without getting real responses, solutions to our populations that are dying. As a woman, I celebrate that in this space, in this summit, we are considering the role of women in the policy of life, in this the policy of using our instinct, our maternal instinct, to save our mother, the earth, the bigger uterus. Thank you for this invitation, and I repeat, Colombia expresses its commitment in climate change and its commitment to strengthen South-South relations with Africa and with the Caribbean, which will allow us to give concrete, specific responses and to this planetary challenge. Thank you very much.
I hope many of you will join us.
Thank you very much, my sister Francia, for that candid statement. And by the way, Francia has a Kenyan name. She's called Nyawira. And when she came to Kenya, we traced her origin to a place called Meru. So thank you very much, Nyawira. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. A round of applause for Nyawira, Francia. Thank you very much. Now, let me take this opportunity to request my brother, the Prime Minister from DRC, to make his comments briefly, because we've really overshot the runway. Your Excellency, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, not a single country in this world, however powerful and resourceful one may be, one cannot handle this climate crisis. We have to put
Excellence William Ruto,
Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and host of this summit. Excellencies, heads of state and government, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Madam von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, Mr. Moussa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to take the floor on this day on behalf of His Excellency Félix Antoine Tshisekedi Chilombo, President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, on the occasion of this African Climate Summit in this magnificent and beautiful Kenya International Conference Center. Like those who took the floor before me, I would like to thank the Republic of Kenya, the sister republic, for the warm welcome accorded to my delegation, and I would like to extend this gratitude on behalf of the President of the DRC. Organizing the thing that is to develop positive solutions for climate in favor of Africa and the world. This summit affords my country the opportunity to meet the expectations as regards the problem of climate, and precepts are based on three fundamental principles, that is, a green economy, biodiversity, and renewable energy. As we can not overemphasize that the DRC is a kind of solution country which imposes on the world because of its potential and innumerable assets, which is an undeniable contribution that is there for the conservation of nature. A favorable ecosystem, our country in fact has huge forest resources, and 155.5 million hectares, which is more than 10% of the forests of the Congo Basin, an important reserve and a well of more than 30 gigaton of carbon, and also its potential of the solar energy, which represents 37.7% of Africa and the world. The Democratic Republic of the Congo can, through its electric power, can provide and supply Africa with this energy, and also its young population, its labor force, and which is a great potential. And as President Ruto has said earlier on, the African potential is known. Here it is a question of transforming this potential and harness this potential in responding to the issues of climate. We last year had a crisis, the fact of the deregulation of the wells and the dry season, which in fact had a lean corn season in East Africa, in Central Africa, as well as Southern Africa. And this has destabilized our economies. This has made us more aware of the response that we should give to this climate problem. For me, and the response of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there are three indispensable ingredients. One is the will, solidarity, and determination. The will is through the honoring of commitments that we make, particularly the countries that pollute, and as regards the carbon tax, as agreed at the COP15, will on financing, innovative financing, and financing green economy, as agreed at the last summit in Paris. And then the investment on energy, the development of value chains here in Africa, and this with a response for jobs for our youth, and the will to enable us, as it has been said here, that is access to financing on fair and equitable conditions, and the reduction of debt of the vulnerable economies through compensation, because it has also been proposed and I think it has to be recalled. And the second ingredient is solidarity. Solidarity as regards projects of common interest. I'm here thinking of and referring to energy, green energy, the needs in energy and the people who live in the forest, and also thinking of the Inga Dam, an integrating project, and we are open to proposals so that we need the efforts of each and every one. I can give another example, the agreement between the DRC and Zambia on the development of value chains, solidarity on issues of common interest, as is the case like the Congo Basin, the Amazon, and the Mekong Basin, as called by President Denis Sassou Nguesso. And then solidarity as regards peace and security in order to guarantee the protection of forests, biodiversity, which has been destroyed by various criminal activities. Then determination, which is the third ingredient, in the search for innovative solutions to climate, as it is the case here in Kenya, and then the determination for a better world to be bequeathed to our children, and also the new climate economy, and access to conservation and the rehabilitation and restoration of our forests for the production of, and then regenerative agriculture, and also to ensure food security. It is for this reason that we are in favor of the establishment of a fund for climate change. We also are making an advocacy, and we want to do it on the margins of the UN General Assembly, which will be organized on 19 September, on a carbon market that will be profitable for Africa, and that will be on the margins of that summit. So all these issues, we show solidarity, and this should apply not only to Africa but also beyond. I sincerely want to thank President Ruto and all the participants for this opportunity that is afforded to us through this summit, which will contribute undoubtedly to all the meetings on climate. I want to thank you all.
Thank you very much, my brother Sama, for your comments. And another round of applause for my brother Sama. Let me ask that we now prepare the clip from my sister Motley. Just hold it as I give the floor very briefly, maybe 2-3 minutes, to the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Salah Jama from Somalia, if he is there. Okay, if he's not there, can we take the clip from my sister, Mia Motley?
Your Excellency President Ruto of Kenya, Your Excellency Azal Assoumani, President of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, I'd like to thank you for co-hosting such an important summit. Thank you also to Your Excellency UN Secretary General, my dear friend and brother, Antonio Guterres, and to presidents, honorable ministers, and everyone present for contributing to this remarkable occasion. We are gathered here today for what is truly an important summit, not just for Africa, but for the entire world. And while I do wish I could join you in person today, please accept my participation by way of this message as I bring this from you from my own shores here in Barbados. President Ruto, you know that Kenya is one of my favorite places, and if I could be there, I would be there. My friends, so many people across the globe are now imperiled and impacted by the climate crisis and the interconnected impacts that take place, such as pollution and deforestation. The world has discussed and debated all of this. But the fact is that for too long, we have done far too little. And as I said in Paris, we're not moving at the pace or with the scope that is necessary to tackle the environmental decline if we are to safeguard our people and our planet. The climate crisis affects everybody, but particularly it has devastating consequences, life and death consequences, for the very poorest and most vulnerable. And they come from countries who didn't help cause it. But my friends, we still have a choice. We can continue to talk amongst each other, seeking perfection or even casting blame, while the world literally burns. Or we can choose to transform our future. We can choose to shape it. To do so, we've said all along, we need to take action now, and at the pace and the scope that matters. And why with such urgency? We now live in a world of superlatives. I call it the season of superlatives, the hottest, the rainiest, the warmest. Everything is breaking new barriers and new records for the Guinness Book of World Records. And yet every day we continue to do nothing or enough as we see the impacts of the climate crisis. We need to stop talking and we need to do. The Bridgetown Initiative is an action plan that we've identified to make the world a better place only because we live in a world where capitalism and money dominate so much that unless we unlock the financing mechanisms, we're not going to be able to take the necessary action at scale and with speed. At its core, the Bridgetown Initiative sets out how we can rebuild the international financial architecture to be fit for purpose, so that countries like ours and yours are no longer disadvantaged by systems that were not built with us in mind when they were established. Now is the time to do what needs to be done. There's no other word. N-O-W, a simple three-letter word, now. We are at the crossroads for humanity. And this, my friends, is a time when political will, matched by the recognition of our reality, will make all the difference in the world. I know that many of us recognize this who are there today at this Africa Summit. Your countries and your people continue, like mine and ours in the Caribbean and across SIDS, to face the brutal effects of this climate crisis. And we also face, of course, that climate financing gap that is limiting your ability to respond effectively. This cannot and this should not be. Brothers and sisters, I say to you today that it is up to everyone to do all they can to ensure the continued health of our nations. We must work together from the African continent to the Caribbean. Understanding nature and the climate crisis does not respect the boundaries which man holds fast to as borders. Indeed, I say now it doesn't matter because we're seeing it in the north, in the east, the west, and the south. We must stand up for what is right. We must share a sense of responsibility to our environment and indeed to the loss of biodiversity on land and in our oceans. We must share a sense of responsibility to each and every generation. We, my friends, are capable of achieving common goals, but we can only do so when we share that sense of responsibility to one another. We must be our brothers and sisters' keepers, and we must look to treat others as we would wish to be treated. If we apply these simple precepts that our children live by daily, then I believe that we can begin to see success. I trust that the science will continue to be all at the center of all that we do, and I trust, therefore, that that ability to link science with finance, with public policy action, can make the difference to ordinary people in Nairobi, ordinary people in Bridgetown, ordinary people wherever they are found on this planet. Thank you, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much, my sister Motley, wherever you are, and for your very kind comments. Let me now take this opportunity to ask the Deputy Prime Minister from Somalia, Mr. Jama, to make your statement, and I request my brother to make it brief. Thank you. Thank you for understanding.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for reminding us not to look backward but look forward with regard to what we can do.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, fellow leaders from Africa and around the world. On behalf of the President of Somalia, Dr. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, and the people of Somalia, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks to the President of Kenya for convening this very timely inaugural African Climate Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, across the African continent, from the southern tip to the northern edge of the Sahara, from the Sahel to the Horn, the impact of climate change manifests itself in some very similar, cyclical, and destructive patterns. And it's this common threat that brings us all together to form a unified voice championed by President Ruto. Ladies and gentlemen, Somalia, located in the Horn of Africa, is acutely aware of the profound weight of climate change vulnerabilities. Rising temperatures are very common in Somalia, and the predictions state that by 2040-2060, the temperature will increase by 1 to 1.7 degrees Celsius. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to highlight a set of variables that interact together and render the African states extremely vulnerable and their communities. The era of climate change has become synonymous with the nexus of food insecurity, forced migration, and displacement, coupled with conflict. It has been widely stated here today that over 150 million Africans are subject to food insecurity and hunger. Around 60 million of those are in the Eastern Africa and the Horn region, and 5 million in Somalia. Since much of the African countries are not industrial states, climate change impact affects us at our most vulnerable places. In places like Somalia, pastoral communities and agrarian communities are the most hard hit. So today's very proud livestock herder or a farmer could overnight find themselves in an IDP camp outside the big cities, becoming another added number to climate change vulnerabilities. I would like to allude to an element of combating climate change that has not been widely discussed in this plenary today, and that is our coastlines and the blue economy that President Gayle spoke about. Somalia has the longest coastline in the mainland continent, but overall in Africa, our blue economy is underperforming, and rising water levels, extinction of coral reefs and mangroves, and biodiversity is an imminent threat. For the ocean gives us more than 50% of the oxygen that we consume. Ladies and gentlemen, Somalia annually loses a revenue worth of 300 million to illegal fishing. And I think investment in the sector would allow us to enhance our potential to cope with climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, the final question I would like to raise is how well are the African states and societies situated to combat climate change? I think that point has been very well articulated by the previous speakers. The African states have a unique set of challenges that puts them in a precarious situation. Limited fiscal space, changing global markets and volatility, lack of access to finance at a reasonable rate, all these elements compounded, and the climate change divert the African states from investing in development and sustainable development goals, and on a regular basis focus on humanitarian interventions. Such an approach should be abandoned, and we must look for more meaningful engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, when droughts hit California, you do not see the death of people. But when droughts hit the Horn of Africa, you see both the death of people and the loss of livestock. So climate change affects Africa in some very profound and immediate ways. Finally, I fundamentally want to agree with the argument put forth by President Ruto that Africa should be and ought to be part of the solution to combat climate change. We have a very young, vibrant population. More than 70% of our population is young. We have 60% of the world's potential in terms of renewable energy. We have the greatest potential for agriculture and livestock. And instead of the world feeding us, Africa has the potential to feed the world. But for that to happen, there needs to be justice and reform in the global financial institution. If we cannot access finances at a reasonable rate, a rate equal to others, then for us bringing about a transformation would be an elusive goal. I'll give you the final example of where Somalia stands today. We are fighting a war against Al-Shabaab, Mr. President. That's why our president could not be here. He is in the front lines. We are finalizing a debt relief HIPC initiative that took us almost a decade, serious fiscal limitations. After we complete the fight against Al-Shabaab and we finish our debt relief program, we will find ourselves in a very interesting situation. Do we go for concessional loans to invest in infrastructure, in human capital, in sustainable development goals, or do we deal with the droughts? We almost averted a famine a year ago. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, in the last 30 years, Somalia has experienced 18 droughts, 2 famines, and equal number of floods. In order for us to develop the resilience and the mechanisms to cope with those things and empower our resilient citizens, we ask for international financial institutions to be reformed, adaptation programs to be increased, and Africans should have a common voice so that we can take it to the next scope. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. And I want to confirm as a neighbor the whereabouts of the President of Somalia and give him our regards. Let me take this opportunity. The President of Nigeria passed by and did request me to give a chance, a very brief moment. Minister, 2 minutes. Isaac Adenkule, the Minister of State for Environment from Nigeria. If he is in the house, you have the floor. And, oh yeah, thank you. Minister, please make it brief.
We need both, and we need both quickly, rapidly, efficiently, and to work in practice. Secondly, Africa has already launched the Africa Climate Resilience Strategy through the African Union last year. So we have the framework to work, and we have the initiative to access the financing.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I am here to deliver the Nigerian statement on behalf of my President, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is unable to be here because he has to be in New Delhi, India, to be part of the summit of G20 leaders. Your Excellencies, President of the African Union, my brother, the President of Kenya, fellow African presidents, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Excellencies, speaking on behalf of Nigeria, I extend my heartfelt congratulations for the landmark occasion that marks the inaugural AU African Summit. This event, as well as our recent efforts and advocacy on the topic of climate of change, boldly demonstrates to the global community that Africa is rising to the challenge and taking decisive steps to deliver a sustainable economic future for our people. The African Climate Summit occurs at a pivotal juncture, offering us an exclusive stage to spotlight our priorities, solutions, and needs regarding climate action to the global community. As a continent, it is critical that climate action spurs socio-economic development for us. We know that with robust planning and increased investment in the region, this is achievable. Africa is already bearing the brunt of a climate crisis that it did not cause. But our continent, with our significant renewable energy resources, critical minerals, vast carbon sink, and growing population, can be a strong solution center. Distinguished participants, in Nigeria, we have articulated our unchanging position to advance climate action without jeopardizing economic development. We designed an ambitious energy transition plan to achieve universal access to energy by 2030 and net zero emission by 2060, while prioritizing industrialization, job creation, and economic growth. Significantly, our plan helps to crystallize the scale of resources needed to deliver climate targets, so that by the current financial flows will not suffice. Nigeria's energy transition plan requires 1.9 trillion in spending up to 2060, including 410 billion above business as usual spending. This is additional financing requirement translates to about 10 billion per annum, but average international financing flows to Nigeria for clean energy have been about 655 million per year over the last decade. Similarly, the unconditional target in our nationally determined contributions requires $7.7 billion in investment annually. In 2019-2020, all sub-Saharan Africa received barely approximately $20 billion USD in climate finance. Annual climate finance flows to Africa are currently just 11% of what we require, so more investment have to come to the continent. For us in Nigeria, we are presently establishing partnership with both public and private sector players, driving innovative policy changes, advancing renewable energy projects, including on-grid solar and electric vehicle development, and exploring innovative financing mechanisms like carbon trading to lay the foundation for an all-encompassing transition. I recently made public the key focus of my government captured as an 8-point agenda: climate action, environmental sustainability, etc., to achieving 4 of those agendas, which are food security, poverty eradication, sustainable job creation, and security. We recognize energy transition partnerships are emerging an important source of capital for climate-sensitive energy efforts in developing regions, and Nigeria wants to be considered for one. My team is currently working on a proposal to the G7 for the JET-P for Nigeria. It is encouraging that South Africa and Senegal got JET-Ps, but they must build up across Africa in addition to other strategic financing opportunities. This summit is essential for highlighting such requests, sharing ongoing efforts, and establishing inter-country collaboration. Mr. President, I assure you and fellow leaders of Nigerian unwavering support as we embark on this journey to clearly communicate Africa's position on climate action and expedite an equitable, sustainable future for all of us. God bless Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. I will extend another 2 minutes to my brother Ban Ki-moon, if he is still in the House. If he is not, then I will request the Honorable Huang Rungui from China, the Minister for Ecology. Excellency, you have the floor.
Africa speaking with one voice and pushing for a global
His Excellency Ruto, President of Kenya, His Excellency Asuma, President of Comoros, Ministers, Heads of State, ladies and gentlemen, greetings to all. I am very honored on behalf of the Chinese government to be invited to join the Climate Summit to discuss with African leaders, friends and colleagues on climate change and sustainable development. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to the Governor of Kenya and Ruto Williams to convene this summit. I would like to also thank President Ruto to the Chinese government to attend this. Since the beginning of this year, extreme weather events have occurred frequently around the world. Forest fires in Canada, heat waves and floods in many parts of China, and floods and mudslides in Malawi, among other African states, have caused serious loss of life and property, as well as ecological crisis. Climate change is a global challenge that can only be addressed through solidarity and cooperation. The UNFCCC and its Paris Agreement are hard-won gains. To reflect the greatest global consensus, we should always adhere to the principles of common but differentiated responsibilities, equity, and respective capabilities, so as to build a solid political foundation for global climate cooperation. Africa is one of the regions in the world most vulnerable to climate change. Which also plays an important role in the climate governance and actions. Faced with the multiple challenges of development, poverty reduction, and climate change, African countries have taken vigorous actions in adaptation and mitigation and have made great efforts to realize the goals of the Paris Agreement. China, as the largest developing country with over 1.4 billion population, can totally relate to what Africa is experiencing in face of all the challenges. President Xi Jinping has pointed out that addressing climate change is not something that others want us to do, but something we must do. China has set the goal of carbon peaking by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060 as our NDC. China has taken vigorous actions which have led to positive progress. In this regard, China has become an active player to respond to climate change. Over the last decade, China has supported economic growth of over 6% per year, with only an average annual growth of 3% in energy consumption. Thus, the installed capacity of renewables in China is up to over 1.3 billion kilowatts. And China has brought down the global cost of renewables, contributing significantly to the global response to climate change and emission reduction. China has launched a national carbon market covering 4.5 billion tons of emissions per year. We also produced over half of the global e-mobility vehicles. We have afforested an area of 1.02 billion mu, equivalent to 6.8 million hectares, contributing to a quarter of the world's new forested area. China and Africa has been very effective in climate cooperation in the past 1 decade. We have assisted Africa's low-carbon and climate change adaptation demonstration zones, supported its clean energy infrastructure and smart agriculture, and helped enhance disaster prevention and mitigation in Africa, and also facilitated the implementation of the Great Green Wall program in Africa. In late 2021, China and Africa jointly issued the Declaration on China-Africa Cooperation on Combating Climate Change. As of August 2023, China has signed MOUs with 15 African countries on climate cooperation. I would like to take this opportunity to announce that in order to implement this declaration, China plans to launch the program Africa Solar Belt under the South-South Cooperation on Climate Change to assist relevant African countries in developing and utilizing solar energy, address power shortage, and transition to green and low-carbon development. Development is the way to enable people to live a better life, a top priority for developing countries. Recently, President Xi Jinping has launched new initiatives such as the Support for Africa's Industrialization Initiative and China's plan for the modernization of African agriculture. We are ready to work with African countries to deepen cooperation in climate actions and sustainable development, and to join hands in promoting green, low-carbon modernization. Meanwhile, we also call on developed countries to proactively shoulder their historical responsibility and fulfill their commitment to provide developing countries with at least $100 billion every year in climate finance. As President of CBD COP15, I would like to also call for your attention to the intrinsic linkage between biodiversity and climate change. I have heard a lot of remarks just now which have mentioned the rich biodiversity and forest resources in China. In Africa, containing huge carbon sink. China would like to work with the international community to fully implement the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and to create harmony between man and nature. Finally, I wish this meeting every success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let me now take this opportunity for another 2 minutes to ask my brother Achim Steiner, the UN Undersecretary responsible for UNDP, to make some brief remarks. That is another Kenyan from a place called Nakuru.
Asante sana, Mr. President, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Heads of State and Government, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. A great deal has been said this morning, but I'm still inspired, if I may say so, by your speech this morning, Mr. President. And with that, I take a license for a moment to take you back to a year in Kenya's history when you were 15 and I just a little bit older. It was the year that in Olkaria and Hell's Gate National Park, the first geothermal unit was installed. I mention this because the journey of Kenya in so many ways represents, when it comes to the energy sector, to leadership, to transition, to many of the things that you spoke about this morning, reflects what happens when people do not take the answer, it's not possible, it's not doable, it's too expensive, too seriously. Hell's Gate National Park is only about an hour outside Nairobi. Kenyans know it well. Visitors, please visit it, because it is today one of the most remarkable places, the backbone of Kenya's electricity generating economy. That first Mitsubishi turbine installed in 1981 was installed against a great deal of skepticism. I learned about this history during the years that I spent here. It took many pioneers to envisage it. Today, Mr. President, I believe that Olkaria, with its various generating turbines, generates almost 1,000 megawatts of electricity. And ladies and gentlemen, you are in a country that may very well become the first country in modern history to actually generate its entire electricity supply with clean energy sources. Kenya today is a country that has passed the 92% mark, and it is no longer alone. In fact, Mr. President, there is another country in South America I visited and I did not know. Uruguay today, well over 90% of its electricity supply with renewables. This is not to say that every country can follow the same path. But what we do in UNDP, and why I'm so proud to be here together with my Secretary General and so many of the partners that are today invested in precisely the kind of vision that you have laid out for Africa, is that we can be partners. We have listened, we have learned together, and today, as UNDP, 36 countries on the African continent have invited UNDP to help them undertake integrated national financing frameworks to address this continuously frustrating reality that this continent is asked to borrow for things that it was neither responsible for nor it can afford to borrow in this world of today. That is why looking at finance with the kind of lens that you have both spoken to this morning is so important. Secondly, also pioneering projects such as solar mini-grids, another major enterprise of UNDP. For the first time in history, we are supporting 21 African countries to try and connect over the next few years 260 million people to electricity supplies. A $65 billion investment opportunity, but it needs hard work, both to prepare the ground, to find the investors, and to then roll it out. And finally, Mr. President, let me just commit to you, in the presence of so many leaders from across the continent, the United Nations Development Programme, as part of the United Nations family, as you heard from the Secretary General this morning, is deeply committed to Africa's future transitions, coming out of the reality of today, but investing every day across the continent. I'm proud to today lead an organization within our UN development system that is literally present in every African country on this continent. We are invested in terms of your nationally determined contributions. We are invested in your energy transition just as deeply as we're invested in poverty eradication and ultimately a future for Africa that you spoke so eloquently this morning. Thank you so much for the privilege of addressing you today, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana. I guess everybody, when they get a chance, they speak about their village. The Olkaria, where Steiner has very passionately talked about, is in his county of Nakuru. Thank you very much. Now, let me give another 2 minutes. Finally, this is the final one, to Bill Gates on video for 2 minutes, and then we will move the program to the next stage.
What I'm saying is that's not enough. I think all the other multilateral
Hello. I want to thank President Ruto for convening this event and prioritizing this important work. I started work on climate change over 2 decades ago after I left my full-time work at Microsoft. And I was focusing on fighting poverty and fighting diseases. When I visited Africa, I saw 2 things. First was how climate is already affecting agricultural output, although they've contributed almost nothing to these greenhouse gas emissions because they're dependent on farming, they're near the equator, they're already experiencing more damages than other countries. But I also saw the energy shortage, and we need Africa to have lots and lots of energy to develop their economies. It's fantastic that the African researchers and companies are now thinking about how they can reduce their emissions and continue to grow their economies. Breakthrough Energy is the organization I created to help with climate mitigation. The goal is to innovate, to make the cost of being clean far, far less. And that means we can reduce the emissions and avoid this temperature increase that has such a negative impact. Late last year, I was in a farm in eastern Kenya, and they were experiencing drought. And so I talked through with Mary, who was the farmer, how the new seeds and new approaches were helping her. She had drought-tolerant seeds that made a very big difference. She also had chickens that were bred so they could be more heat-tolerant. And because of those new tools that were empowering her, she was expecting to do well despite the tough climate challenge that she faces. And so this is just one example, but by helping with better tools, allowing farmers like her, who are very innovative, to do new things, we can minimize these damages. I've seen there's African researchers work on innovations in fertilizer, making sure these new crops fit their ecosystems and getting those seeds out, getting them approved, and making sure they're low cost. So we do need to invest, whether it's in the innovation or the deployment, getting resources against those, including the promised support from rich countries, will be very, very important. The global goal on adaptation, which will be finalized at COP, should lead to more investment to help Africa deal with these challenges. And so we need partnerships. We need government, philanthropists, businesses to come together to focus on climate adaptation. Yes, we need mitigation, but adaptation doesn't get the energy it deserves. And so I'm excited that you've come together. I'm excited to work with all of you to solve this problem. So thank you for your efforts.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as we now wait, we're going to take a very short interlude of music. And at this point, can we all just stand up and stretch a little bit? Just stand up wherever you are. See whether we can stretch. I'm sure some of us have been sitting for long, long periods of time. So the next part we're coming to is the new global climate finance architecture. This is a centerpiece and a part that we've been waiting for all this time. And therefore, thank you so much for your patience. You can sit down now. You can take your seats. I just wanted you to stand up and stretch for a little bit. And this is definitely going to be one of the highlights of this whole conference. So we request that we just remain patient, and this is where we are heading from here. So I'll request that we have a short interlude of music just to get us ready for the next session. As mentioned, it's a new global climate finance architecture that is coming up right here. So for now, let's have the interlude of music as we get ourselves ready.
First and foremost, you need clear policy actions from African governments.
Once you've stretched enough, you may take your seats.
I am part of the solution. You are part of the solution. Africa, rise, rise, Pamasuka. Let us all rise, Pamasuka. Africa, rise, rise, Pamasuka. PEMC. Let us all rise, Pamasuka. We are part of the solution. I am part of the solution. We are part of the solution. You are part of the solution. I am part of the solution. We are part of the solution. show ourselves in all our splendor and glory. Yeah. Let's come together now. Bring down all barriers for a greater tomorrow. So Africa, arise. Let us all arise. Time to be counted. Arise. Let us all arise. We are part of the solution. Part of the solution. We are part of the solution. We are part of the solution. We are part of the solution. I am part of the solution. We are part of the solution. We are part of the solution. Africa, Africa, ati wetu wa kusimama umewadia. Kwa pamoja tutafute za kuzuia mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Secure the future of humanity. Solutions made in Africa. Speak with one voice. Save the world. Africa, rise, Papa Zuka. Let us all rise, Papa Zuka. Africa, rise, Papa Zuka. Let us all rise, Papa Zuka. We are part of the solution. We are part of the solution. We are part of the solution. You are part of the solution. We are part of the solution. I am part of the solution. We are part of the solution. You are part of the solution. And for the change we want to see. Protect our planet. Fight climate change. You and I. We are part of the solution. I am part of the solution. We are part of the solution. You are part of the solution.
On one indictment. We will all be asked, what did you do to save our blue planet? What did you do to save our ocean? I intend to plead not guilty. I hope you can too. Thank you.
Can we give a special round of applause for the Secretary General of the Commonwealth for an absolutely moving and very, very powerful speech. We have come to the end of this event, and I really want to thank you for finding time to be here. You know, the oceans are this innocence. We spew carbon into the air. The oceans can't help but taking it up. So we might think they're doing us a giant favor, but in fact, we are acidifying our oceans. In fact, we are destroying the very thing upon which human beings and this very planet relies. When I opened this earlier on, after the distinguished chair of IPBES had spoken, I asked you all to take one breath. And Baroness Scotland told you all that that breath comes from the ocean, every other one. So let's make sure that that innocence of the ocean is not something we forget. Oceans cannot but help take up the carbon. We're better off planting trees, planting and securing our mangroves, ensuring that we have kelp forests, ensuring that we take care of our terrestrial ecosystem. That's where we want that carbon, while we turn off the carbon tap and ensure that we decarbonize our economies. That's why, and I'll ask David to speak a little bit about the Moroni process, because we heard from His Excellency, the President of the African Union, about this important process. And of course, the important comments that have been made during this session about how what we do here is not just going to stay in this room. This has to reverberate. It has to obviously go into the Nairobi Declaration, and we hope that it will. They're negotiating it as we speak. But each one of you must take this into your societies, into your communities, into your families, into your churches and mosques and temples, into wherever it is that you are. Because these issues about oceans is not and cannot be looked upon separately from the terrestrial ecology, which is why what IUCN did in framing this idea around the Great Blue Wall, I hope it's not a wall that comes as us, but it is a construct that we can think about of how we can regenerate our oceans and make them sustainable. And just before I hand it over to my dear friend David, I want you to know, since Baroness also referenced plastic, that we are in the middle of a hard negotiation on plastic. And I invite you to take a look at the treaty text because it was released yesterday. It's on the website. Go search for it. And it's also in a tweet that I made yesterday so in the next round of negotiations, which will take place here in beautiful Nairobi, a month out or so, member states will have an opportunity to begin to see how ambitious they want to be on the new plastic treaty. And I urge you all, friends of the ocean, to carry that message to wherever you are as well. So can I, on my behalf and on behalf of the United Nations Environment Programme, give a big thanks to IUCN as well as the African Union, who are the brains behind this event, but also a big thanks to everyone here for attending. Over to you, please, David.
Thank you very much, Inge, for your wonderful moderation of that event. And I think it's a real sign of where we can hopefully go with this and the process that we're engaged in, that we have managed to get through this event with such excellent speeches from the heads of state and their attendants when there's so many things taking their attention, and of course as well. It's really your efforts coming to this room to attend that really can help move forward the agenda and the calls for action that we make, and getting oceans into the Nairobi Declaration and forward from that. So thank you all for your attendance, and hope you have a good rest of the summit here in Nairobi. Thank you. Well, thankfully, we had half our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellencies, for the chance for
the Technical Support Unit of the African Adaptation Initiative. But we need consistency in all that we do. And we know, and this was said before, that the line of division between adaptation and mitigation is becoming blurred, which call for better understanding of the potential synergies and co-benefits of adaptation and mitigation action. We need to reframe mitigation and adaptation measures and communicate them as linked and mutually reinforcing. Nature-based solutions offer significant progress against multiple solutions to scale up adaptation measures. We were told that there is no problem of finance. We, at the local government, we encounter a lot of problem of finance. We were told that if there is imbalance between mitigation and adaptation, it's because adaptation don't have appropriate metrics. So we, at the local government, we demand this metrics to you people, because for us, adaptation to climate change is a question of life or death. The mayor of Banjul here present witnessed a huge flood with loss of lives, and she told us that women that lost their houses are still sleeping outside 1 year after the disaster.
So bring the money to the local government. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jean-Pierre, for bringing that.
Ni Ndikani College tuko na NGOs ambazo zitakupatia 50% sponsorship. Kimbia kwa branch yoyote usukue your sponsorship form. Ni watu 200 tu.
Ndikani College training beyond the obvious.
Kuiga mashini yaku ya kompyuta na njĩra iria njerũ na cia kĩrĩu ciĩgiĩ ũgitĩri nĩ iteithagia kũmĩgitĩra kumana na mĩkora ĩrĩa ĩngĩenda kũingĩra na gũthũkia maũndũ maku.
Safaricom Business is enabling organizations to connect, protect, enable and transform their businesses by leveraging technology and innovation. Visit www.business.safaricom.co.ke.
Ngai wonaga maria mwikagira hitho-ini mari mega kana memoru mundu nieterere musara.
Riu no wigwatire skiza ya rwimbo rweru ungihinya *860 *291# no ririkane Inooro nĩ mũciĩ wa aini othe.
Hena mũndũ itangĩtũra itarĩ.
Akshe kariki itarakunyita. Urauga atia?
He mũndũ ngoragwo ngĩrota nake. Niwe mũtũrĩre wakwa. Niwe
ni ceceni ya Inooro TV.
Sang
nyambe jinange makara ndaki nyambe inengo wetha reke nyambe jinange makara wacha ni choma chome chako nikitosha mboga nikuvutie waya nikitosha mboga nikuvutie waya ndaki nyambe inengo wetha ndaki nyambe inengo wetha producer Barakis inengo wetha brother Dr. Fuda saluni ona dadilito ne para kwe umbazuti ne gwango twarende timba dojibu reke nyambe jinange makara ndaki nyambe inengo wetha reke nyambe jinange makara wacha ni choma chome chako nikitosha mboga nikuvutie waya nikitosha mboga nikuvutie waya Kinyamba inengo wetha na kinyamba inengo wetha ndokana hendio neto maisa todaka toto naga Facebook ndoka hengeso neto visa todaka to posta kwa Instagram to kwendia nyambe jinange makara wajani choma chome chako nikitosha mboga nikuvutia waya nikitosha mboga nikuvutia waya ndaki nyambe inengo wetha ndaki nyambe inengo wetha Shambia gaitura katweka mondo niwe kondo mondo mwendo waku ni mwega ndinge waiganania nonge baby wembagiria ngahorera mwendo waku ni mwega ndinge waiganania nonge baby wembagiria ngahorera DJ Smile maondo mainge mega na ninge moru na no ngata ubone motulire watonya ngoro yako nenda iguire ke hondo kiega kiuga ningerekereria
ni mwega ndingĩwĩiganania nongi baby wĩmbagĩria ngahorera wendo waku nĩ mwega ndingĩwĩiganania nongi baby wĩmbagĩria ngahorera
Pizza Certified Homes Limited Salimika Baba
Nĩnjũĩ harĩa andũ amwe maiguaga kĩũndũ matuona tũnyitanĩte nĩ wendo reke maiguage ũguo thĩ waku matonaya na matingĩhota gũtũtigithania wendo waku nĩ mwega ndingĩwĩiganania nongĩ baby wĩmbagĩria ngahorera wendo waku nĩ mwega ndingĩwĩiganania nongĩ baby wĩmbagĩria ngahorera kunyararia gesuka na ndoka itare mokenu kuma gwitũ gĩcagi nĩguo tũtonyane ndũgera tũmathake honia nĩ ruo rwa giti warĩa ngorene komaga nĩ ruo rwa giti warĩa ngorene komaga karibu woko gwakwa na wambehorerie njoka ũkĩmenyaga ihenya inene riunaga gĩkwa ihatha mutho makaga gĩcagi ngatha makagĩcuka na cia mũrangano itiĩtagio mona irimũ narĩ na cia mũrangano itiĩtagio mona irimũ narĩ nĩ niĩ mĩini nawe arĩ kĩhonge nĩkĩo ũrabura mũtĩ ũrĩa mũgũnda namo maciaro ma mũtĩ ũrĩa wothe nĩ matunda njara-inĩ cia ihonge waguo tige ũrimũ na niĩ ndigechocha tũĩmbanĩrie mũndũ ũyũ nĩ witũ kabira wa heritage ũrĩa harĩa Naivasha wewe naketa twĩrĩ gũthira na andũ iria njiguaga mũtũire thiriti na ithe wakwa na tũtũ twakwa kamenyirio nĩ kanyoni gakwa ga kwĩhokeka nĩ mũciarĩte tũmahathaka hĩna kairĩtu nĩ mũciarĩte tũmahathaka hĩna kairĩtu nĩguo ndamenyage ndiĩrega mũrĩa ndatenguo gĩtingĩhithĩka ona rĩ wendo nĩ rĩa thani tũkĩendana nĩ ndamũrĩtie kana nĩ arĩ mũka akĩnjĩra ndarĩ njugaga nĩ niĩ wake wa mbũri akĩnjĩra ndarĩ njugaga nĩ niĩ wake wa mbũri nenie meini nawe arĩ kĩhonge nĩkĩo ũrabura mũtĩ ũrĩa mũgũnda namo maciaro ma mũtĩ ũrĩa wothe nĩ matunda njara-inĩ cia ihonge waguo tige ũrimũ na niĩ ndigechocha tũĩmbanĩrie mũndũ ũyũ nĩ witũ Ng'ang'a Francis ũrĩa njie
Yes, ni mũndũ gwĩtwo Joyce wa mama na mũndũ gwĩtwo Kũisikiliza rwĩmbo rwĩtagwo niĩ maini thaa ikũmi handĩte wega na ndagĩka mĩrongo ĩrĩ na ithano gũkũ nĩ Inooro TV ngũnyitia ũgeni mũno makĩria niĩ njĩtagwo DJ Smiles
na niĩ njĩtagwo Nyambura wa Kabugi kũnyitia ũgeni mũthenya wa ũmũthĩ nĩ wa Fresh Tuesday tũgĩtambũrũkia nyĩmbo ta ici njerũ chwa na cia aini arĩa maragĩthiĩ na mbere na gũkĩruta nyĩmbo njerũ na aini erũ arĩa maragĩthiĩ na mbere na gũkĩyũkĩrĩria mũthenya wa ũmũthĩ ũkoragwo wĩ wao tũgakorwo tũgĩtambũrũkia nyĩmbo njerũ haha ũguo na our ever smiling DJ ũhoro waku DJ
wako nĩ mwega biũ rwĩmbo rũu nĩ rwega mũno
nĩ wega
nĩ niĩ maini nawe wĩ rũhonge no wĩtĩkire gwaku gũthiĩ ũguo
kũu Kemini ikare ari umwe uri ari we ikare aya angi makeherero the
na turaugire mambo ni matatu marathi o handu maundu maraikara mari matatu
ona andu maikara mari matatu mini na honge igiri
ti mini na honge igiri aiko we ni uramenya we tiwe mini remain unknown tukahure thimu tuko no hesimu mini remain hare hena ki muno remain unknown
Na ndukahurire thimu meini.
Tukahurire thimu utuko. Ate ukihurira riu.
Na no uhurire meini. We ruhonge.
Ni meu. Ni video tugituika ruhonge. Nyere yemo tuika ruhonge.
Ni ndio rĩatirĩrĩ meini riu ucio meini ri. Ura wikarire giti kiu ne wahurirwo ni ruhonge.
Asa.
Kana ndari na rutha ruu. Ndakahurire utuko, ndakahurire meini.
Ndakahurire meini. Ndakahurire riu muti kwena branch. We ndukahure kiri ni undu wa climate change ri ndukahure thimu thukia climate ya muciĩ wene na ni future waku umenye wathukia kuria kia kwa meini ona ni wethukirie meini no mwake ke depend na branch na umenye meini ni kiheanaga rutha ni getha branch igetherwo ga time kanini
eyero ga time kanini
kanini uguo tukahurire muthe utuko wetereria kuhure ona ti utuko we ndukahurage wetereria
uhurirwo no atu kuhura ni muthenya
na meini angihura meini angihura ugakira ki angihurira muthe ugakira we ndure muthe ndio muthe ari wa fisi na riu ma branch no mwaka makoragwo nginya na riri na schedule ya muthe no mwaka akorwo akimenya githaa giki gakorwo umite nyumba aingira ainuka thaa ici
Sunday ndahuragirwo ni muthenya wa family
Sunday ndahuragirwo na ndukara mwire ati muthie mukone ati nginya mucira gaki ako we muthenya waku ringi ni taka Friday na Saturday hani
na Friday muno ina Saturday kidogo kuma hau kamba koherera
kiasi nginya ugathie bureki nginya mande niguo guthiaga
niguo guthiaga ndio na ndio ni urakutithia maundu maya
maundu mau
ni agoka kenjanuraga gakimenya ndige guikara nduma-ini muno
ni nduka uikare utakumenyeka
ni
kwe meini uikare wehithite pio tondu umenye nginya ukoragwo savitwo makanika phone book ni ya muthe alikitwo
Njoro migunda uguo yani
no mwaka wikare we mundu mungi agikorwo we branch eni
wikara mitaratara ukasi position yaku no kahorera nayo o uguo
no ugaikara na kindu gitagwo atiriri mwathani na riu na ni ramenya we tiwe meini ri no mwaka uheo kindu gitagwo terms and conditions and they apply very harshly
if you dare
to break any na menye ora ungitwo fene bero gagwo
we ni urugagwo
branch ni meini ringi no
ukugwa ni okoro ni uri warugwo no ira ni we meini umenye ti we meini handu tiwe
handu no amenya riu no amenya meini ni ki ne permanent
ni kile permanent
wewe
ure ri hali
wewe temporary
Sidaruga go temporary ni we yes
ni contract ya kahinda no menye riu kwenda ungikihitie muno okorwo nawe we branch na wina ka branch kangi kara
hathukaga hau
Pani tu riu ni mwahuta inyu
muhuta inyuothe tondu na ka branch kau gaku gako gucungirire ni undu wa meini
hari ni undu wa meini ri hari maundu makionaga guku mwena uyu wa riua na muthenya wa Fresh Tuesday na nyimbo nyingi muno nguharĩrie nĩ gũkorwo ngĩcihutahutia ũguo iria ngĩroretwo ngĩgĩcirora na gũkĩririkana gũkĩnjĩria kũhĩtũkĩra kũrĩa gwa social media ciothe nĩ ũkuona DJ Smile so hamwe na Inooro TV ũkĩhũthĩra hashtag ya Fresh Tuesday.
Namba ya SMS ni 22488 kana 22488 Facebook page yakwa ni Nyambura Kafu, Instagram Nyambura Kafu. Muthenya wa umuthi wa Fresh Tuesday tuko tukinyiterana ageni arĩa marĩkĩtie gũkinya gũkũ studio tukorwo tukimenyana nao tukorwo tukimenya nĩ nyĩmbo irĩkũ makĩrutĩte kũguo ikara mitambo-inĩ nĩgetha ũkĩone ageni arĩa tũgĩkũharĩrĩirie muthenya wa umuthi tuna ever smiling DJ.
Yes, gũthakĩra rwĩmbo rwa Francis Gathero rwĩtagwo wendo witũ, wetagwo Franco wa Asubu ũrĩa ũĩkaine.
DJ Smile. Nina wa magitarina
Umuthi ndoka tene Sweetie nie ndinywete onake Ndoka tucirithanie Niguo wendo witũ baby Sweetie tũrĩmĩre Tondũ kuona wendo witũ Ũihũire maramata Tondũ kuona wendo witũ Ũihũire maramata Rĩrĩa tũgũkiranĩra Mweri ũmwe na matukũ Nyũmba kana itangi thĩinĩ Maĩ gũkiranĩra Mũndũ ekage maũndũ make Ikuona harĩ ũgima Nĩkĩondoka baby tũcile Tũcoke magomano Nĩkĩondoka baby tũcile Tũcoke magomano Twaikania wendo magi mucua twagaragara mu geka-inĩ gũgathera hĩndĩ ya iromo cia hamwe Sweetie cikĩgeithania nake Tom na Jerry oi mano kũrĩkanĩra nake Tom na Jerry oi mano kũrĩkanĩra bedroom itũ baby yanire mocarĩ ũrĩrĩ witũ wa mami nĩnjũĩ nĩũmakaga macuka maitũ morĩrĩ nĩmagegearire gĩkeno gitũ gĩa tene ũima gĩathire kũ gĩkeno gitũ gĩa tene ũima gĩathire kũ Sambala Viraje Mushama Gũtirĩ kĩndũ kĩmũrĩo ta wendo wa thakame Gũtirĩ kĩndũ gĩcama ta kĩhiko gĩkene njĩra nĩkũ ndahĩtirie Sweetie nĩkuga sorry ngwĩre nĩkũ wahĩtirie baby ũnjĩre sorry ngwĩre nĩkũ wahĩtirie baby ũnjĩre sorry Wamũratha nĩatwĩraga
Igakunjuria ndathiĩkũ gweteria rĩtimo nango ona moya matharaita gacagua nĩtwĩtĩtaita Joyce bagona bangi mwĩna ndawa cia kũlevya ona mũingĩre marima ona ithuĩ tũgũtĩmĩra kuo nyũmba itũ gwathire atĩ ancebebumia ndarati kuma nene na yahuo igeragĩrio gĩkũyũ-inĩ na twatuĩria ene igata na rugiro magĩkũyũ irogotera tũrĩa
Kanema gwitũ nĩ ndĩ ya ng'ombe Ũhaka-inĩ wa kabina gĩkũyũ Ũrĩa ng'ombe iyũragia mĩcaguthi Na nakuo cuba nĩ iya moimĩte
DJ Smile
Ndĩ ya ng'ombe nĩ kuma gĩkambura Na rũthi gĩtĩka mangũthigio Auma thigio tũkinya Ngũirobi Tũrutĩrwo tũrĩa mũciĩ Ikũwa wa bosi Ngeithianga fruits Ũngĩũka ndĩyo kenda mũhiki Tũkana mwĩre mũtware thenema Airĩtu a ndĩya na tigũtũrĩka Ndendete wĩra gũkĩra ikeno Tũkana mũgũrĩre nguo njerũ Ũmwĩre atĩ ndĩya gũthiĩ mũgithi wake nĩ ũmũtware kwanyu Gũthũngũtha gwake nĩ kũrĩma Mũiyũri wa Kimende Ngeithia wanjĩ kwa sase Mũthiũke ndĩya muone mũhiki Ina njarumi macuka na nyori Na mũkinyĩre wa gũciarwo naguo Ndarĩa menya kuongerera nguthi Na wega wake ndũngĩmuoya thĩ No nginya wambe warie na aciari ake Warĩkia kwaria makũhe mũhiki Matiendaga wendo ũrĩa mumbĩke
Eni wa irimu Ũkanda mũrũ wa gĩkambura Nĩndoiga nĩ wega nyina wa ciana ciakwa Nĩnjũĩ ti ciana nĩwe ũramisi mũno Ũkegwatia nacio Tigana na mũnye
twatiganire tene mwaka muhituku tondu twatigana nikwanyitanire guothe maina tupros mwendo wa suma iguaga thoni ndicokagira muno indi ria ngwiciria oro wa ciana ciakwa ngeyuria ihana atia tigani ukomo waku igiana urathimu no nie ngetigira tondu ni ngui wega tondu twatigana nikwanyitanire guothe awaya yokengororie na ando gitare kagawe emisaga ithako gakumisi kugire kadagireka mana ndarira muno ndeyuria kareke bebi wandigita gugikire mathara wajikire yedikariganderwa bebi ona igekaikandia imatokariganira bebi ona igekaikandia imatokariganira egide darasa bebi yakorikira wa mambio kinye haria wetaga kwaria mandari darasa na dari mugogo bebi wakorikira wa mambio kinye haria wetaga nande mande wakinyire haria wetaga guthie ate koko akaiguta bebi ukarura muno anyitoka kamu ndauko gatheka keriganiro amambi mano taruturiko ariganiro kiambio kuri atakurikire okeriganiro bebi maria twanagerera egithe darasa bebi yakurikira wa mambio kinye haria wendaga kwaria mandari darasa na dari mugogo bebi wakurikira wa mambio kinye haria wendaga nande mande wakinyire haria wendaga guthie
mokinyeria biseno twina mae bebi one ore anda thakarire one ore atwaganere ono nyende akinyiro ne visa inonge mokinyeria biseno twina mae bebi one ore anda thakarire one ore atwaganere ono nyende akinyiro ne visa kinyeria bisano twina mae bebi one ore anda thakarire one ore atwaganere ono nyende akinyiro ne visa
Just dial *544# or go to My Safaricom app kununua bundles. Go Mokara, go monthly na Safaricom.
Wekelea na shabiki kaende.
Naitwa Alice Mutindi, nimetoka Embu. Nikapigiwa simu kwanza nikaignore, nikapigiwa tena nikashika, nikaambiwa ninapigiwa kutoka Shambiki. Nikakumbuka,
ulikuwa umecheza.
Nilikuwa nimecheza. Sikuwa naamini hadi saa hii bado.
Ulipiga nduru.
At least ni enlarge my business. Chezeni mazita win pia nyinyi.
Wekelea na 50 bob pekee for a chance ya kuomoka na 500k. Lazima kaende, yende kila wiki.
Minadai wote twende hivi.
Not for persons under the age of 18. Shabiki.com is authorized and regulated by BCLB under license number 416.
Bingwa inafanya ile kitu venye inafaa.
You are my champion, but this Bingwa is the real deal.
Mommy, I need some more. I want to be strong like daddy.
Bingwa ni tamu tamu.
Bingwa ni tamu.
Bingwa Premium Maize Meal ni mutu uthondeketwo na gikiro kia iguru na ufashiriri munene ni athondeki njorua a mutu wa ngima na shafashi. Bingwa Premium Maize Meal, unga mtamu wa mabingwa kutoka Grain and Millers Limited.
We love to share our cultures, and the one thing that unites us all, that celebrates precious moments, nurtures our Kenyan spirit, welcomes, and even inspires. Our language does all of this and more. The more the milk, the better the chai. Chai Kweli in a Brookside Dairy Best.
I heard about the Gomoka Nago monthly promotion on the social media pages, that is on Facebook. I bought the monthly data bundles worth 250 shillings and I got a link to spin and win with and I won 5k. I was so happy about it. Actually, I got the value for the money I used. In fact, more than what I used to purchase the bundles. And I'm also eagerly waiting to win the grand prize, that is 1 million.
Nĩ icanjama na ndũhio kuma kabatini itu ya tabarĩra cia thinema iria wendete. O mũthenya wa gatatũ thaa 2:30 cia hwaĩ-inĩ nĩ thandĩ cia ũrirũ wa wendo.
Ũtũrire mwana kwa imamu wanyu na wamũtiga kũu.
O mũthenya wa kana thaa 2:30 cia hwaĩ-inĩ ndumũrano na ngahĩha cia mĩciĩ nĩ ndogo.
Rĩu nĩ ihinda rĩa gwĩtua ta actress na wĩtue biũ ũndũ ũngĩheo wĩra kwambia sasa.
O mũthenya wa gatano thaa 2:30 cia hwaĩ-inĩ
Wendo kimenya mathĩna marĩa andũ arĩa angĩ mahĩtũkagĩra. Rich Kideno.
Ngucanio na mĩtangĩko ya ithaga rĩene nĩ mwago wĩkindĩrĩte o gũkũ kwa Inooro TV, ndũkahĩtũkuo.
nyondo wa mwakoyo keria navoya ni gutwarana nawe maundu makwa mathereme kutherema fefa yaku ikorwe mwenda wakwa mwaka uyu ndikwenda mikosi maundu makwa mathinywenywe gutire gukoba ni gukobania maundu makwa mathinywenywe ngai ni waro ni undu wa mwaka uyu keria navoya ni gutwarana nawe maundu makwa mathereme kutherema fefa yaku ikorwe mwenda wakwa ninogete kugendaga maguru maundu makwa mwakoyo ni makwagira ninerathira gutwarithia ngari maundu makwa mwakoyo ni makwagira ngai ni waro ni undu wa mwakoyo keria navoya ni gutwarana nawe maundu makwa mathereme kutherema fefa yaku ikorwe mwenda wakwa ukirathima andu na buroti udirikane na foundation wikera ndiloti ngomborithanagie udirikane na foundation ngai ni waro ni undu wa mwaka uyu keria navoya ni gutwarana nawe maundu makwa mathereme kutherema fefa yaku ikorwe mwenda wakwa ngai ni waro ni undu wa mwaka uyu keria navoya ni gutwarana nawe maundu makwa mathereme kutherema fefa yaku ikorwe mwenda wakwa mwaka uyu niguo ngurathimwa ndabundabu mwaka uyu niguo ngurathimwa ndabundabu mwaka uyu niguo ngurathimwa ndabundabu muthuri wakwa ni akuma gikundire kia minyota
yes mwaka uyu turarathimwo double
yes
uria weteire twana arathimwo twi double na maundu moke maikarite wega uguo thank you muno mugani witu wa muthenya wa muthuro tuinire rwimbo ru ngai ni waro na twake mucokeri ngatho muno ni ndo ugikinye guku studio karibu sana mugeni.
Thank you muno Nyambura
niguo
yes
ndakena muno ni ndo kuona ritwa riaku tari tamburukiri gitondo ndona tari ndira maitho tondu ndinona wita atia
betagwa Patrick Jiro yes
ngari watiga ku
ngari re nimbetagwa Patrick Jiro ni aire
ni ere
ni aire wa kuma Embu County Osio Patrick Jiro umwe no wagutwara safari rari
okay kugutiwe
nani reu ni wagutwara ino cia kuthii mature
niguo cia kuthii mature
mature
matuine
rebise mugaga matuine no koria Embu tugaga mature
ni mature twendu wiki mweri ni waguthoma Kiembu tondu ni tukoretwo tugithomithio Kiembu muno kuma reke njugira wiki ginya ni tukoretwo tugithoma na turagithie na mbere na gukinyithania cigo icio
baba kuthoma
kugu twagikena muno Patrick Jiro kwanyu niku
wetunie wetunie Embu nimete Embu Embu County Mbere North constituency Itura ya nyumete ni Kamutu wetawa Kamutu
haya andu Kamutu mahana atia
andu Kamutu ni aropio nenda merire ni nguka goko na ni mbise ni matororetie na ni namakethia muno ko musikora na ciarirwe
niguo ruku rari ni Kiembu kana ni Kimbere
ni Kimbere
o ni Kimbere
no Embu County ina Mbere na Embu
riu nye ndaria kembere
na ni kiro tiganu muno na ki buto direct ni ndeigwe tari okay
riu ni tondu umwe no we riu no awigue ta kwa iyo ndu umwe no riu agakora nego ciariritwe kuu no awigue tofauti riu
tofauti kanini
no ni kaundu kanini muno
okugo nitagi koyo kia Nyeri na kia Bu uguo riu no ukoruo wi mu Nyeri nigetha umenye uyu
no kumenya difference ya mundu wa Nyeri na wa Kiambu nie mundu wa Nyeri na no amenye no ndo atiriri no ndo atiti
na
sio no wa Nyeri
sio no wa Nyeri ndio ni wamenya wendera menya ndo Nyeri uri makoma kiaria ni mese niguo
ni mese
niguo ni ndamenya
ni mese waro vio oga tamboria no mese waro vio kibune kyoru
ni ga fio niguo
vio
ni ni no ndiranyitithania DJ Smosi na kinya handu asuha twaikenerera ndo cio muno wambiriri kuina mwaka wa 2012 niguo arutire
kuina nambire kuina mwaka wa 2012 nilo nainire rwimbo rwakwa rwa mbere
albamu ya mbere
albamu yakwa ya mbere
yari na nyimbo cigana
yari na nyimbo 5
yetagwa atia
itagwa ngai ekaga maundu manene
kuma 2012 ginya thaicuna kugu wena miaka ni 11 kuma rira mbiriri kwina hau guo etiguo hau guo kuma 2012 no ikarire tondu kuma 2012 wasokire kuruta album igi 2018 zamu yangu ya baraka ni kavinda gakwa ga kurathimwa niguo na twaikenera nyimbo ciaku ciothe ni kigoco kana ni tukanagia na worship
kwina worship na kwina kigoco
kigoco ni kio kingi
kigoco ni kingi
tondu uria warigithie rwimbo riu wadirikania kairitu ka naku kwanyu mwena wa Embu getagwo Sharon mtoto wa mama
Sharon mtoto wa mama ni mwese na no andu mangethia ngwira ngukethie muno wena DJ Smile ambira ni mukethie muno uguo ni amukira ngethi ciake turai na kiathi giake kia lounge turarikirie Sunday kira kiega pio kabisa
na no afundithirie ungi guchangamuka thiini wa wini niwe kana ni Sharon
ni tondu ndi nyimukuru
niwe winangite
nike
haya rwimbo ruge rwaku ni ngai ni waro ni ruo warike gutuinira thaisi rwa 2021
yes
kuma hau rwimbo ruge rwarutire mwaka uyu
yes kwena rwimbo nirarutire mwaka uyu na ni ruo rwikuo riu
waku ngai turohora rwimbo
ruu nirarutire ni tondu wa kuona miaka yo yothe by the nyine muvonoku na ni mutungatiri
wavonokire ri
nie na avonokire ni primary school
we primary
ni nambiria kuvunjia ni primary
class 6
na vunjagia ni kana ga Sunday school
no avunjagia we primary
ni akaditha ya SK
ni na ni gwithi tukimakagio ni kama na kakangi kahunjagia
kareta kwa Reverend Victor
na gugatumakagia kumbe ahunjia anini ni ingi
riu ni gwetu nambiriria ni ta Reverend Victor ru anako
wanako
na kou
kugo na ndo kwanyu ni moi ukorete ukimahunjiria
ni mese uguo
ni makwisi
uguo na inire na uga waku ngai
dukauma
ni we Nyambura no aume kwa ngai
ndikigeria
Smile no aume kwa ngai kwa
asa ndeta gukuria tiriri kuma primary we ukuhona kuma primary ukahona primary yothe secondary yothe ukirikia ugugira kinya hau ukinyite ndugu wagatumagario ni uguo wetwa hana haria
nkiwa na rwimbo rutiuga magerio ni menge muturire uyu no ngai ni atuvecaga vinya wa gutoria
ndikuo
ni
no nyende kuigua ta ga challenge kama wanagerera uhonokio-ini we munini
ni munini ga challenge kamwe na navetukira magerio maikuo na ni mengi na ta challenges cia andu aria anini ndimwe gukorwa peer pressure ukanyitana na group itiagirire no lakini tondu ni na imuvono kuma ni class 6 ni navotaga kwira ngai ambe vinya wa gutoria kana na riria okuina ni gucemania nginya na magerio mengi darunye ne muvikani by the way I'm married to my very beautiful wife etagwa anake ni mutungatiri etagwa Reverend Nancy no lakini riu mbere ani muona kwa ina magerio mengi anake
matiagaga
ukaga no atuvecaga
no tuyaga pia ndenda gukuria tiriri tondu we kurire Embu na ni turakimenya kiria cash crop yako uniri kuri ni rwahutanie nayo
nimeonaga no ndianavutania nayo
niki nimehia
iyo
ina ni mumera no kurite uguo
ndwese riu ni kuringana na musimamo wa mundu in one way or the other ni koragwa imiega ina advantage tondu ni otuthomithetie nayo okore ogo tukona ucio naguo ni undu mwega no lakini riu
kubuthira
kandi na mugunda wayo ni mbisi no kwenda ngoretere DJ Ismail no ndi na mugunda wayo no andu ni marimaga agitokera tukenagira ati ni mabuthagira rimwe kuthomithia ciana ciao uria tungimera riu ni ati matigatonye mwana uria utai mwega
niguo haya tureka undu kwa miso ngenda gutwira nigetha tukinyuke kinyira riu ringi kaundu ka miso ngiguo ungenda kuongerera
okay kaundu ka miso kara ningenda kuongerera ni kuga nauga nyumete kuria Embu County na still ngoragwa ni music producer nina studio yakwa kuria Embu Town etagwa Dominion Media na ni turatethereria aini muno kuvota ku record nyimbo ciao na igakorwa ikithie na mbere wega pio na ni turacokeria Ngai ngatho nondu wa undu ucio na in case mundu wonde ungienda ku record nyimbo ciake either Embu County kana neighboring counties no amburire thimo 0717176248 0717176248
yes thank you mune ngujoke guheru kanya ga kugeithania abuto handle ciaku ura witaga thini wa Facebook YouTube guo nigetha mundu agigwethe kone nyimbo rakende kurekorderwo kana batura mutunga nginya we mutungatiri hamwe na mutumia waku mundu enda rigi gugo visit kanitha gwaku kaundu takau uguo
okay social media handles ciakwa betagwa YouTube Patrick Jiro Facebook ni Patrick Jiro Twitter ni Patrick Jiro Instagram ni sionthe social media ciakwa sionthe ni Patrick Jiro yes na undu cio wenge ni nauga ni mutungatiri na bishop gwetagwa Right Reverend Bishop Masamba thoka na ukethia muno my bishop na undu cio wenge ni ngienda kuga ati mundu wonde ungenda kumona Embu Town no amburire thimo no atovote kuona tukaria maundu maire mathatu megie uboro wa kanitha kana uboro wa wini
haya geithania
wamende gutuma ngethi kwe my dear wife Reverend Nancy na kupenda sana ni watu mitengombano ugombana tuonanie nawe ne kamundu kanini muno kamenge
wareka tene wareka
no ndo wainge kondugera mo permanent wakwa inge
ni permanent wako
negua gucokeria Ngai ngatho na ciana cietu Nadia Morugi na Clara Wakeo na Njoki Winfriend uria mai nao kumucine mbisi ne mandoretie na ndonthe akuria kamutu no amende kumakethia muno na ini onthe ni aini enki muno mandu manangethi Sharon mtoto wa mama Paul wa Rose no andu manangethi nyingi muno ambira mbuke ni mukethia DJ Smile ni muretere ngethi ciake na still no amende ginya gukethia principal chaplain wa Embu County etagwa Reverend Watabitha na ni araruta wira mwega muno na kila mtu
haya
yes
thank you muno Patrick Jiro ni ndio ukamuthenya wa muthe Ngai akurathime na thina mbere ukurathima wini waku na mawira mau mangi mothe ukirutaga atuike wa kumarathima na nitokena muno niwe gutucerera DJ Smart ni gututhakira rwimbo rwaku rungi tambe tuhumuke kidogo tucokererie na mugeni ucio ngi asante sana
asante
thank you
okay
Ngororia metoma we mwana
muthenya wa gatatu tariki 6 wa kenda mwaka uyu kwambiriria thaa 2:30 nginya thaa 3 cia rucini nyitanira na Njoroge wa Githiji na Kamau wa Kang'ethe thiini wa Inooro rucini makinyita ugeni Kenneth wa Mburu Jambi kuma Imara Land Investment Limited nderetini ya wendia wa migunda ndukahitukwo ni ndereti ino ya mwanya.
Thank you for calling me. I appreciate that you tried calling. In case I don't pick your call, I'll call you shortly.
Dial *811*281# to get thank you for calling me.
Primary bone tumor. Ogo ne kuga iyo ne cancer iria yumanite na ihindi. Cancer cia mahindi no ikorwo cikiganio maita meri. Hari iria cikoragwo cikiuma kundu kungi kuri